of that lot, just north of St. Louis.
Morning.
Yeah. Daughter lived there on the Illinois side.
Yeah, I lived on the
She lived where?
Placeholder.
Fallon.
Yeah, anyway, that's it.
And she worked at Belleville.
Yeah.
She worked at the
All
hospital.
that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, she worked at this really
Yeah,
first
I lived
hospital
right there
job.
for a long time. I still have friends there, so we were lucky to stay with my girlfriend, so we.
I got her, yeah, because it storms like crazy there. I got her a really,
All right, good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is March 28th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Would you please join me in a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, roll calls.
Mayor St. John.
Here.
Mr. Gokenhour.
Here.
Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Mr. Ryba is absent. Councilwoman Cooper.
Here.
And Miss Miller.
Yes.
All right, we do have two applicants, one applicant and then one formal review on the agenda. The first one is the commission review of Dove Field Partners LLC and 3Bs and a K Holding LLC rezoning continued from 12/27/21 and January 24th, 2022 meeting. The applicant has requested to rezone parcels number 417-230-01-035-000, 417-230-01-034-001, and 417-230-01-034-000 from not zoned to planned residential district. The parcels are located along 3Bs and a K Road, south of Sherman Road. We have the applicant here, Mr. Fisher, will be presenting on behalf of the applicant. The applicant's made some significant revisions to the plan, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Thanks, Mayor and Chairman, members of the commission. David Fisher, Kent Park Fisher, 207 North 4th Street, Columbus, Ohio. Here on behalf of the applicant, I also have our entire team here. I have Jim Schrim, the developer, Jim Hills from Patio Homes would be the builder, and Gary Smith from G2 Design, our landscape architect. So we've got a whole complement here to answer any questions you might have. We've been before you a couple times now. We've given you a lot of details and specifics. What I thought made the most sense tonight is to go over with you the changes that have been made. As perhaps some of you know, we've had some conversations with the mayor and with David Green and with Steve Piles of the city to talk about where we are on this and what we should be doing and to further discussions along. I know they have reached out to you after we've submitted some plans and gathered your feedback along the way. So what I'd like to do, once again, is just kind of go through where we are, what's changed. To the extent you want to dig back into things from the past, like talk about specific divergences, I'm happy to do that. But I think we did a pretty good summation of all those before. So here's where we are today. Steve, if you could put up my slide B-1, which is the preliminary development plan. That should be further on. Keep going. D, like David 1. There you go. Oh, right there. Great. Thanks. Let's use that as our reference point. So you can see by looking at that, the first thing we did is we moved the entrance from 3Bs and a K much further south as you requested, which also resulted in the water feature changing around some. That will better accommodate the southbound left turn lane and make that easier for us to accomplish for you. That was one of your initial requests, and we think we've satisfied that for you. As perhaps you've noted from the site details and the other materials that you received from us, we have reduced the development by 20 lots, which reduces density from 2.98 to 2.73 units per acre. While your code is 250, we're still going to be seeking a divergence on that, but that's a 50% drop of where we were in terms of the excess over your permitted density. So we'd ask your cooperation on that. We corrected some language on lot 12, which is on the southern portion, but goes, yeah, thanks, Steve. Our text, I didn't like the way that read before. You don't want to go back and have to plat one lot. later on. So we're platting it, but we're restricting it. You can't have a home built on it until there's an access point either north or south from the new development to provide an additional access point for emergency and other purposes out of this development. You can notice just by looking at this, we'll talk a little bit more about open space. We've consolidated and enlarged and added amenities to the open space. That was one of the comments we heard from you during our earlier discussions with you. Then Steve, if you go to slide F4 and have F3 ready, F4, keep going. That's a land, keep going. One more, right there. Nope, right there.
You want 3 or 4? Oh, there you go.
That's 4, F4. So this is an exhibit in your package. By the way, you have all this material. A lot of this got changed out of our last discussions with the city. So these are supplemental to the package you got a few weeks ago. So the things you're looking at your desks right now are what we're talking about. So this is the major open space exhibit. This is the big centralized open space. And what I want you to notice from that, as well as some other drawings, is we've added more detail on the multi-use trails. We have multi-use trails flowing throughout this development to provide connectivity and activity for all of our residents. As I mentioned earlier, the open space is much larger and even more usable than it was before. We have increased the acreage for open space from 26.36 acres to 30.55 acres. We now have 36% open space. That's over 15% above your code of 20%. Moreover, 75% of it is usable and active recreational use. It's not just some leftovers and some pieces and parts here and there. It's really well planned and designed and usable by the residents. You have a half-acre soccer field. You have 2 picnic shelters that are sizable. You can see the timber frame there in the right-hand corner of a illustrative picnic shelter. There'll be 2 of those. You see where they're noted at either end of the park to be used for family gatherings, for picnics, for sporting event pavilions. So a lot of thought has gone into providing really usable, accessible areas. We've also incorporated younger activated play areas for the younger kids to come in. So it's really becoming and has become a community gathering space. And flip back to the previous slide just a minute, Steve. That's the southern open space, which once again where the mailbox pavilions are. But you can see it is well amenitized with nice seating and walking areas and parking for people to park their car to come pick up their mail. What's that? Keep going. Keep going one more down. Is that Jim? Yeah, that shows the connectivity of all the paths that I mentioned a little earlier. That gives you an idea of just how much there is in connectivity of the multi-use paths, including the interesting feature over along I-71 that really provides a nice buffer for this development from the interstate. Steve, if you go to slide B6, B is in David 6. I just want to spend a moment on this, and to the extent we need some, I think that was it right there. Yeah, it's right there. Can you enlarge that at all, Steve? This is, we worked on this with you before, but this is further detail on the discussion of how setbacks operate. So what we've done, we've shown some illustrations on both the 52-foot lots and the 60-foot lots of how dwelling units will situate on the lot, how the front, rear, and side setbacks will operate. Not to jump ahead of myself, but you're going to hear me say in the future, and perhaps you've already seen where there's no more 5-foot setbacks, side yard setbacks. Everything's 6, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see from this how the house situates on the lot. And I thought it was kind of interesting that I was studying this today. You can really see how the house is balanced on the lot in that by allowing the divergence we proposed in the front to 25 feet, you still have a good front yard area with plenty of parking for cars without invading the sidewalk. You've got decent space on the sides for the side yards, and then you've got usable rear yard space, whether you choose to leave it in the yard or choose to add some amenities back there. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we go through this. We haven't really changed that a lot. So we were asking for a 25-foot divergence for setbacks on the front and I think that's 40 on the back, that would be an opportunity to invade it some for unconditioned rooms. But you can see even with that, there's still a lot of green area left in the back there. 35 in the back. Thanks, Gary. So that's, I think, a good illustration. Once again, if you study that for a minute, you start to see how well balanced the lot is, where the house and improvements situate on the lot compared to the overall lot size. Other changes that you'll see from the materials we sent you are, it's interesting to note, one of our divergence, which is our divergence number 2, is your old code said you can't have more than 3 lots per acre, which is a geometry issue for a developer. Interestingly, your new code that your city is considering does away with that requirement. So that's still a divergence for us because we're operating under the old code, but that's something that we wouldn't even ask about in a couple of months when the new code's adopted. Same thing for the tree replacement policy. We've asked you to consider some 4 species of trees that under your new code are addressed and listed where they are not counted. So we'll follow. I talked with Mr. Whitney today. We'll add divergence on that to contain those species. But once again, your own deliberations and code are addressing those issues just as we've asked you to address them. Also, you'll note that as we proceed forward, we're trying to save more mature trees in the existing grove of locust and walnut trees. So we've heard what you said about trees. We want to work with you on that. I mentioned to you the extensive natural buffer along 71, which we think is important to us. We think it's important to the city, and we think it's important to your residents. You'll note in the text, and this has been there for a while now, that we've increased the number of 52-foot lots that get enlarged to 54-foot from 20% to 50%. So once again, more bigger lots. And as I mentioned briefly a minute ago, we've deleted all 5-foot side yard setbacks, nothing less than 6 foot, and nothing less than 12-foot separation between buildings, 1 foot and 2 foot less than your code would provide. So those are the changes we've provided to you that we would ask you to deliberate on and consider with us this evening. Anybody from our time have anything to add to what I've said here in terms of things we ought to be considering?
I think you've been all the changes.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Chair, we'll leave it to you. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Do we want to go into the staff report, Steve?
Sure, we can.
Okay.
I think Mr. Fisher summed things up pretty well. In the March 24th dated one, I noted the reduction of the dwelling units and the density going from 2.98 to 2.73 dwelling units per acre. The lot count did go up on the 60-foot lots, went down on the 52-foot lots. The divergences are, the number of them are still the same. The structure separation is now 12 feet. That was something that came in the last few hours after a discussion last week. Same thing with the side yard setbacks. That's 10 feet now. No, it's up 12 feet now. 6. Let's see. And then a little bit about the tree survey. We did note, and Mr. Fisher mentioned the need to consider a divergence on that. It would actually meet our future code, but since this is being reviewed on our past code, the appropriate species aren't taken into account. So that would just be one additional divergence. I think it's important to note calparinches are very similar, but they're about 190 trees will be coming down and about 1,000 trees will be planted in their place. that will be very dramatic in 10 to 20 years. That difference. And my report was in your note, your materials that came out on Friday. So if you're searching for it. There were a couple other little notes about signage permits, that's separate. Street lights, we need to get those to match our standards at the end of the process in terms of style. Parkson had a comment about the driveway approaches with now having a multi-use path in front of a couple of those, taking that into account. And then also a question that dealt with gravity sewer and the applicant's comfort in being able to tie into a gravity sewer at that distance. That would be solved during the engineering process.
All right.
That concludes my report.
Any questions for staff? All right. We're on to comments and questions from the commission. And I'm going to start just a couple things. I want to say thank you for coming down on the lots. Thank you for listening to the commission. We know 20 lot reduction is a real financial impact. I also want to say thank you for working with the developer and the builder together on the side yard setback. That was feedback that we heard from all commission members, and you know that also has a financial ramification. So thank you. And you know, also in the middle of this, that you've done some more diligence on the sewer capacity, and your costs are not coming down; they're going up, and we're aware of that. So thank you. I also want to say thank you for adding the amenities into the usable space. You know, not sometimes when developers reduce the amount of lots, sometimes they expand the lot coverage for other lots. You didn't do that. You converted it directly into usable open space. And again, that's a concession on your end, and we very much appreciate it. And also the amenities that are on it, I think they're going to be attractive, well-maintained, flex space, and the way the neighborhood flows and connects with the multi-use trails, I think you guys did a really nice job of. Probably the best neighborhood that I've seen in Sunbury in terms of connecting north, south, east, west, and throughout the development. It wasn't just meet a requirement or, you know, try to do your best. I think you did a very thorough job of that. I wanted to say thank you. With that said, open it up for other comments or questions. Comments or questions?
Mr. Parkinson, in regards to, you said something about the path intersecting driveways. Could you clarify what you were meaning in that?
I'll try, but it's getting into geeky engineering stuff. So typically the edge of the sidewalk and the back of the curb are maybe this far apart. Okay. And you've got to go from the 6-inch gutter up to match the sidewalk with your driveway approach, the approach slab that you put in there. When you reduce that from, and so that's this slope, right? When you reduce it to this, you get this slope. And the street comes down to the gutter. So now you've got something that's looking like this instead of maybe like this. And there's a potential that you're going to nose out something like a Corvette or even my Honda Accord has a pretty low front end, depending on how the details of the grading for the lots go. And I just simply asked, you know, has this been considered and will it be considered as they proceed through with design? And the reason it's this is because we're putting an 8-foot trail where we normally put a 4 or 5 foot sidewalk. So we're 3 feet closer to the back of the curve than we otherwise might be. And that makes for a shorter and a steeper driveway approach.
Makes sense. Thank you for calling that out. We assume the developer will not want cars to run into the driveway. So we figure you guys will be able to figure that out.
Well, it impacts 3 lots.
Okay.
So,
And I did mention that. It's 1 through 3.
Excellent. Thank you.
I just have one comment also on the pathway. I know when the homeowner decides what type of style of house they are going to build, will you guide them, the ones that are by the path, for windows that are towards the path? Or, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is if they have the style of the house that has all the windows on one side and their path is going right by there, that house style is going to be unhappy, the person who buys that. Is that something that you can?
Yes.
Okay.
Just make sure they're aware of what's going to be there.
Yes. And the other thing is also on the pathway. I see there's a lot of trees. And this is probably my inexperience, is the tree growth reflected in the little tree spot, or is that kind of how it's going to be? I'm looking for blockage so that closer to the houses, that the people who are walking there aren't going to be interfering with the people who are on their decks or their back porch. If you look at lot 168 and 167, which is down in the corner, you have the path going right between them. And if they're in their backyards on their porch, I'm just looking for trees or bushes or something to kind of
Additional landscaping.
that will give them some privacy,
Yeah, I mean, I think we can take a look at that as we move forward with kind of final engineering and final landscape plans.
I just think I know it's not really a commission really, but that's going to be where complaints are that we really can't answer.
I'll just speak to that. So we have that in your neighborhood, and I don't know that we've ever received a complaint from any of the residents. There's trails along communities at Sunbury much closer than the ones that are in, especially the one along Interstate 71. And I would almost say that the houses almost don't put trees up there, so they've got easy accessibility. I don't know of any houses that are trying to block the view of the path.
I'm looking for the path where it goes right between the houses. And
Right.
so they're right, 2 feet from their back porch when they're walking by.
Right, like on Common Bent.
No,
Which ones do you want to refer to?
there's none in Common Bent that I'm looking at. It would be,
Another thing that
Yeah,
we can do is
no,
potentially work with the buyer of each of those lots, and if they want to have more landscaping along those property lines, if that's something that they could.
it's more of the one, that little spot right when it's coming.
Right. You're talking about
Right there.
areas where.
Right.
We will work with the buyers for two.
No, I'm not talking about the whole path,
Right.
just those 2 little spots.
Right, the spot where they go between the lots
Mhm.
and through the side yards, essentially.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's something that they can easily work with the buyers of those lots for.
Any other comments? Questions?
I mean, the only comment I would have is that I volunteer for state parks and some other parks. And I really appreciate the shelter houses because I know that the parks that I'm involved with, the shelter houses are very often used. And I think that it's a real asset to have something that close where you can have a family dinner. You can bring, I appreciate that.
Any comments?
I think that I really like that open space area and the shelters. I think that's a good compromise if we don't want to put in a community center, but that still gives families a place to go and all that space to run. I think it's great. Good job.
Right. Any other questions or comments for the applicant? Is there a motion for approval? I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second.
Second by John Lawrence. Discussion? Roll call?
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Okenauer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Woman Cooper,
Yes.
and Miss Miller.
Yes.
Right.
With the verbal divergence on the trees and
What's that?
with the verbal divergence on the trees.
We'll get things, if you get back to me in terms of when we're going to council, we'll get that extra diversion that and get some things cleaned up.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, we're on to the next item on the agenda. We have an informal review from Highland Real Estate, Kittner Crossing. I believe we have Mr. Randy Lobig here tonight with us, and the anticipated process of the applicant is going to present. We have had a couple of exhibits we've had a chance to look at. Would the applicant like to come up and, hey, double duty?
I'm staying. I get you for both parts of the meeting.
At least turn around.
It was, I could go out home, but I can't. At least David Fisher got to do most of the heavy lifting, the one before, but, I'm here with Randy Lowry, Gary Smith, G2 Planning and Design. This is a site that we've been kind of, working on and toying around with for 7 years, 8 years. And a lot of that has just been kind of getting through the city's process of, there's been really kind of a long-term planning process with the city of kind of what's going to happen with all of this land, and especially kind of the connection between the potential new interchange and, 36, 37, and how that would be rerouted, because that impacts this site where we are considerably. So I think we were kind of working with the city and then waiting for some of that to settle out so we could see, what this site will ultimately look like, as we would go through this process. So I think finally we're in a position where that roadway coming through has been fairly well defined. We're in a position now where I think we can kind of bring this project in and kind of give it, present it to you and kind of get some of your feedback. So if you look at the site itself, I think everybody's hopefully familiar with where the Foreman tract is. So right there at Kittner, across the street from the industrial facility there, they have, the Foremans have the commercial ground that kind of fronts 36, 37, and then they've got all of that farm ground in behind it that butts up against the existing residential on Cheshire Road. And this is where that new road's going to go through. And so if you look at the next slide just kind of gives you kind of an idea of what the existing conditions are. So you can kind of see, we've kind of outlined where the parkway is supposed to go through. That's kind of the alignment that we've gotten from the city in terms of the alignment that's just kind of been explored and nailed down to date. Obviously, we understand that as final engineering goes through that parkway, that may shift one way or the other, but it probably isn't going to shift too much because there's just not room there for a shift, especially considering kind of the little neck there to the south of the site. So south is actually to the left here. So the little neck to the south of the site that parkway has to go through. So the site that we have is basically everything outside of the parkway to the east of the parkway. So in between the parkway and the existing homes on Cheshire Road, and then the remaining pieces of commercial ground up in the corner. And really, the site is mostly farmland right now. There's one stream that runs right along the back of the homes. It's kind of a very deep ditch that runs right along the back of the existing homes. Then it crosses the road and goes under the road up on 36, 37. Aside from that, the site's fairly open. So if you look at the way that this is kind of highlighted in the city's comprehensive plan, well, if you want to go to the next slide, Steve. This is the overall comprehensive plan. You can get a really good idea of how the parkway kind of works its way through ultimately and into the Foreman property. I've drawn a nice dark black circle around where the Foreman property is. And then on the next slide, I've kind of highlighted, I've enlarged that so that you can kind of see that in more detail. So that dark line, the dark red line that goes through the property in the middle there is a representation of the parkway. And then the dashed or the gray hatched area is the indication of multifamily, 6 units an acre. And then the red area, the red hatched area just below that is a single family buffer between the multifamily and the existing single family. And then what's in the yellow right there is the existing single family along Cheshire Road. And so, in taking a look at that, I think that is essentially exactly what we've proposed. If you turn that to the next concept, and you'll see kind of what we had proposed for the site. And so what we essentially proposed is all of the commercial along the frontage, 36, 37 stays commercial. And we'll develop that into commercial lots and continue the marketing of those for sale. Kintner would continue into the site, and then as a buffer between the existing single-family residence and any multifamily use, we would propose patio homes. And so that access or that Kintner would carry along and it would turn back in to the parkway. I think we're only going to get, if we're lucky, one access into the parkway. We're also going to have an emergency access. There is one access right-of-way strip on Cheshire down at the back end, and you can kind of see where that comes in. And so we'll have an emergency access there until such time that we can get access to the parkway when it's built. And then the final form of how that works out in the parkway, whether it's a right in, right out, or full access, I don't think anybody's determined yet. But we're hoping at this point that we can have access there for people to be able to get in and out of development aside from Kintner Parkway. And then what we have on the Parkway side is essentially townhomes. So these would be for sale townhomes, right? So they would be for sale townhomes. We would just kind of organize these in a way that we could get kind of architecture that presents the parkway, and we can work with the architects to make sure that both of those frontages, both the internal side and the external side, kind of present more of a front door appeal on the townhome, so you don't have what looks like the back side of townhomes up against the parkway in the future. And then ultimately, try and also create kind of nice landscape treatment, walkway, everything that goes along with the parkway there. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We've also included some examples of patio homes. And I think everybody's at this point pretty familiar with patio homes, what they look like. These are some examples of different styles of patio homes, trying to incorporate front porches, different types of materials. And then on the following page, we have some examples of townhomes, and just trying to use different architectural elements to break up the appearance of townhomes so that they don't look like, townhomes in the old days were just kind of long, flat buildings. And so, again, trying to put a little more emphasis on the architecture to make sure that facade is broken up, using the roof lines to help kind of break up the linear appearance and different materials and textures and fenestration and architecture, those kind of things. So with that, I think, there's not a lot of detail on this at this point. I think what we wanted to do is just make sure, we felt that this was kind of going down the same path as what the comprehensive plan was suggesting. We wanted to make sure that the planning commission kind of felt the same way. And, if you guys feel like this is something that could ultimately be supported, depending on, obviously, on the details and, what we would come back to with a formal application. I think we'd like to just kind of get some feedback on that and get you guys thought.
Thank you very much. So, we have any feedback for Mr. Smith?
I like the idea of providing access to the healthcare buildings through that property. but I also think you need to provide access to the 4 new properties that you're proposing.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah, that's a good point. And
versus going out to 36, 37.
we didn't show that here, Joe, but there is an intent to make a connection in the rear of those parcels from the extension of Kittner over to Cheshire. And how that works out and the access on Cheshire, whether that's far enough away from, the existing interchange. We'll have to have that conversation with the city engineer, but the idea would be to create kind of a backage road for those 4 out parcels as well.
Are you intending to go northwest as well to the rear of the green healthcare?
To which one?
See the cursor?
That direction, we don't have any control over those parcels. If the owner wanted to provide some access, there's actually 3 parcels there. We don't have any control over any of those parcels. So I think we would be willing to work with folks, but it's not something that's going to serve the needs of our project, obviously. But some of this it may take a little bit more coordinated look and approach, because ultimately we don't know what that parkway is going to look like from a transition standpoint and what kind of access people are going to have as that parkway turns into, what it's ultimately going to be. I think there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air with that parkway and how the property is going to access that.
Well, I certainly think as far as the parkway goes, we anticipate a full service access somewhere about where you show your road looping back in, and it'll be a full cross intersection and serve the north side as well.
Okay, sure.
And that'll probably be the one access point between Kentner and Domigan to that section of roadway. We've been working, and I know this isn't your problem, but I'm going to make it your problem, I guess. We've been working with the Green Healthcare folks, which is this building right here.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been trying to split off a lot right here. We approved the splitting of that lot contingent upon this lot having access back to Kemper somehow.
Okay.
And the agreement is fairly convoluted. They talk about an easement down here and an easement across here and all kinds of other things.
Right.
But we have always, at least in our court, had a focus on when this develops, somehow there's access to the rear here. And if we can at some point close these access points, particularly this one, to 36, 37.
Right.
And get them somehow access back this way that they can go back this way. So I would invite you to reach out to the owners of, that's probably Mr. Foreman. And I know it is Green Healthcare. I don't know if they're still the owners of the property or not, but I'll reach out to them and work with them and see what you can do together to provide that need. To carry it further, I mean, we're going to lose this lot with the roadway. You got this thing here. If it could somehow come out this way as well, that would be preferred. And you said it doesn't provide you any benefit. Well, if this road didn't come here, but somehow came over here, maybe it does. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here.
I think we're open to those conversations. There might be a way we can actually work that out to the benefit of both of us.
Yeah, I thank you. I don't have an answer. If you can carry that thought further and let us know what you are able to do or what you are not able to do, I think this commission would appreciate that.
Yeah, I think we can certainly have a conversation with folks.
Can I ask a question while you're pointing at exactly there?
Sure. It's this property right here.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're talking about.
Whoa, sorry. That's fine.
Here we go.
There we go.
So you're talking about this lot that's for sale right now, right there.
I'm sorry. Yes, they have received approval for a 1 acre lot split, but it's contingent upon getting access that comes back this way to this road right here, or extended.
Okay.
And they looked at somehow connecting to this and connecting to this and getting an easement across the back. That, no, it's just, nobody wants to play in the sandbox together.
I'm the person who's in contract to buy it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I think we can participate in those conversations, whether it's getting an easement through Foreman's other piece there, or whether it's kind of coming through our property. I think we can figure out a way, hopefully, to make that access work.
The only thing that I was gonna say, Mr. Parkinson, I thought I heard you say this is going to be a, maybe I thought I heard you say it's full service access.
It shows on the access management plan as full service access.
Shows as a partial. Got it.
Okay.
There's a full service right here. Full service, and then somewhere around here.
Well, that's Tom again.
What's that?
That's Tom again.
Back on the left there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a full service in the middle somewhere that none of those properties have access.
I think the 14 acres on the opposite side of us will ultimately still go potentially commercial. And the only way that's going to develop as a commercial property is if there's some pretty easy access in and out of those properties. I think it's the only way that they're going to be able to market those for any type of commercial or office use.
Showing possible right in, right out, range of possible locations for future partial access driveway.
Okay. Well, you're looking at it, so I'm going to trust that that's correct.
Deborah's the one who told me.
Ultimately, from a density standpoint, we're going to be right up against the parkway. It's going to carry, I don't know how many thousand cars a day, what the ultimate projection is there, Dave. But, we were looking at a total of 4.89 units to the acre. Most of that density, obviously, is in townhomes. The Patio Homes is, I think, a good transition between the parkway and what happens there along Cheshire Road. So I just wanted to, make sure that you guys saw that, had any opportunity to comment on that if you felt you had any issues with that.
Can you give the approximate lot widths on the single family?
Yeah, the Patio Homes they're typically 52 foot, 54 foot lots, very similar to kind of what we had in the last application.
What's the depth?
They're typically 130, 125 or 130.
I've been running all types of calculations in different neighborhoods, like what it compares to. Common vent is 50 by 125. So these are bigger than our current patio homes.
Yeah.
Right. Any feedback?
The only thing is, I really like if one of the three options or possible extensions actually happened. So if you actually did the road behind your floor commercial and connected it to Cottontail, that would answer.
Are you talking about
There's a possible connection either.
We didn't share that with them.
Okay, I like if there was another way out of the place.
right?
And so either where you have your emergency, if that became a permanent entrance or exit coming out of the place, or if you put a road behind your Ford commercial and connected it to that road on the subdivision.
I think under the current requirements, I think we would have to make that access down the Cheshire in the rear there a permanent access, just because I don't think we would be able to develop that under the current guidelines. Because we're gonna have more than 30 houses back there, so we're gonna need a second way out to meet the code. Our thought was that that could take less of a prominent role once we were connected to the parkway. But I think we are going to have some sort of an option there for access to the rear, at least for emergency nature, if not, permanent. So we'll have to look at the details of that. We're certainly going to provide a connection between Kentner and Cheshire for the commercial. So we'll have an access there out. We'll have to do that to make those parcels marketable. And then the question is, what do we do on the south end to satisfy the access requirements for the residential piece of it until such time as it can be connected to the future parkway.
Yeah.
You have builders lined up?
I think we've spoken to folks and I think there are several people that are interested, but it's kind of the same story. It's talk to me when you get closer to actually having approval of the zoning. So I think there are definitely people who are interested in developing or building on the property. It's just going to be, what do we have by the time all finished.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The elephant in the room is sanitary sewer service. Have you solved that problem?
I believe so. I'm hoping at this point we wouldn't be standing in the room if we didn't feel like we could solve the sanitary issue. The station.
Yes, and the Cheshire Road sewer is full too, so.
We'll figure out how to solve that.
Okay. Well, so again, the obvious, there's no approvals without solving it. So you'll have to demonstrate to us at some point in time that problem has been solved and that we have adequate sanitary sewer service for your 108 units in your, how many houses? 86 more houses. Yeah. So 200 units.
We can run sanitary along going to the station. We've had discussions, I think, about upgrading the station.
Okay.
And then we've got an easement for a force main to get to the current manhole they could work off of.
You have that easement?
We have approval from the tenant walls. We have to do this. Then we have to design for it.
Is that the flag lot on the south side or is that a different route?
It's the other side. Then it comes right directly into the high school.
Middle school?
Middle school.
Excellent.
I do just want to say now officially, I hate the camera system because I just can't see the back of my head. I haven't seen the back of my head for a long time, so
Sorry.
that's really embarrassing. It's not. Yeah,
There you go.
pretty rough.
There it is. There's all the hair.
Is that
I
better?
think he's purposefully deflecting the
That's much better.
conversation.
I'm moving back. Thank you.
I would say that we have had a resident or two come in the past few years being concerned about that drainage ditch.
Right.
And so I just would want to make sure that I haven't personally seen the drainage ditch, but it sounds like erosion is a serious issue back there.
It is. It's a very deep and steep ditch.
Yeah.
And I think whatever we do from an engineering standpoint, whoever ends up replacing Dave is going to make us consider, whatever we do, certainly not exacerbating any conditions, but, improve it. So.
Yeah, it's.
I don't know what it is ultimately. We'll get into those engineering details, but we all know that that's sitting back there.
Yeah, she was a resident of I remember one at least that was a resident of Cheshire Road right there. And the ditch was behind her house and they were concerned about that.
Yeah, it runs all the way through the property down that line.
Which way does the water run in that ditch? Does that go east or west? I don't know which.
Goes
The water runs, water runs to the west, the wastewater runs to the east.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it goes under Domigan, so there's a concern with the existing culvert at Domigan. We want to make sure that there's capacity if we somehow improve the flow capabilities of this ditch to where more water is now delivered downstream. We've got the Domigan Road culvert, and then I'm gonna hazard a guess, maybe 3 or 4 driveway culverts downstream of that as the creek then turns to the south and joins up with Little Walnut Creek right there at the Cheshire Road Bridge.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So we have to make sure that whatever we do doesn't exacerbate or inundate any of those driveway culverts.
Right.
So it's like a thread on a sweater. You just keep pulling and it just keeps unraveling. So some engineer's going to have a nice little project.
And we're leaving space in that plan, so that we don't impact the ditch. We're gonna ultimately leave that where it is, do whatever's necessary to take care of it.
I may have missed this. Would you be requesting the rezoning of the entire property?
I think the commercial property will just leave as is. I think what's outlined for the commercial use is fine for what they wanted to market for anyway. So I don't really see any need to rezone that piece of it. I think the piece that we would come back to you for rezoning would just really be the residential piece. Because that's the only piece that's not zoned for what we need to do.
So, Mr. Mayor, as you may recall, our current zoning map shows an area for basically multifamily, correct?
Right.
And then a larger area for, I think it's R2. I can't remember.
Right.
I think we might want to have a conversation with Mr. Foreman as to whether, if this were approved, that would satisfy his concerns regarding the legacy multifamily zoning on his property.
Yeah, the existing zoning is kind of funky.
Yeah.
It's defined on the map, but it's somewhat undefined.
Right.
Pretty much anywhere else in record. So,
yeah.
And I think we were looking at that and also looking at the fact that I think your comprehensive plan really reflects what we had intended to do anyway. So I think if we were to go through this process and rezone the property, I think that would nullify all of those issues.
Yeah, the geographic part of it is where I'm, because it's close.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly how that fits if you want to bring that up again. So I didn't include the existing zoning plan, right? I kind of show you on the screen. Actually, just go back up to the site plan if you would. See, so that that multifamily piece kind of comes in here at an angle, and then it goes. It's like right here. You can kind of see this dash line right here.
Yep.
So that is the multifamily piece, I think, right there. It's in this weird little shape on the back of these existing commercial pieces, and that's just the zoning map. There doesn't seem to be a legal description that accompanies that or anything. So everything in that piece, I think, would be canceled out, with the exception of this.
Right, that little triangle, right?
This tiny little corner right there, which I can't imagine this performance can have an issue with.
Mr. Bream will make it an issue, I promise you.
Right.
He's gonna say we have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Before we leave a stranded.
I mean, is it out of bounds for us to have a conversation with Mr. Foreman and say, can we get some sort of a letter to the fact that, the zoning, moves forward and ultimately approved by the city, he would consider that a resolution to the issue, something to that effect. I'm sure there's a much more legally nuanced way to put it, but
We can figure that out.
yeah.
Any major concerns from the commission? Any, go back to the drawing board? Jeff, what do you got?
Along the existing residential, there's going to need to be major screening, as we know.
Yeah.
I don't know that I particularly, well, I shouldn't say I don't know. I do know I don't like the amount of density against the existing residential. I don't know that I'm in favor for full access onto the parkway. I do like the idea of providing service road to the existing and the potential new commercial properties. And again, I know this is all informal and this is just the beginning, but I'd like to obviously see some amenities in there with some nice open space. Is the emergency access on the far left of the drawing, is that where that existing like gas pipeline is, or
That's our pump station over there.
is that a pump station?
That's the sewer. So it's Sunbury property, if I'm not mistaken, where you have it.
Yeah, it's basically a right of way width that's stuck into
And
the
is
property.
there space there for a
It's a-
roadway then?
Yes,
Yeah.
not the parkway, but
Yeah.
for an access road. It's a 60-foot wide right of way.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the idea of having conversation, not me having conversation, but someone having a conversation with the person who lives at the end of the middle school driveway in regards to turning that into a service road or a road also leading into it. I think that would be,
Yeah.
because I know when they put that road in, that person was not happy at all. Not saying that they want to move today or tomorrow, but
Right.
you never know, they may entertain the idea.
So you're saying that they would be interested in moving, have some, purchase that property. The problem is it's one more culvert across that ditch. I think that's where it starts to get kind of difficult. The more times you cross that ditch, the more points you create for potential stuff to back up. As Dave mentioned, every time you got a culvert, then you got the opportunity for trees and stuff to block it and debris and other things. So we have to take a look at how that works. And it also gets pretty expensive, but maybe there's an opportunity to have a conversation to do with that. And if that's the preferred point, that's something we just have to take a look at.
So my point, and just so the applicant knows, I put together a series of observations to the plan for internal review and consideration. It's just as some talking points or some thought points, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're necessarily, and I will speak for the commission, I don't know that I was necessarily suggesting that you actually construct that roadway connection, but that you preserve on your site a 60-foot wide green space for that road, should we ever in the future decide that was something.
Maybe a connection over.
Yeah, rather than build houses in the way that we would.
Right. I think that's something we do.
Thank you for clarifying that. I know we're just in waters where there's, a third party that's not here. We don't know exactly what we're asking for. And this is being streamed. So we want you to have safe access north and south, and we want to make it flow as best you can. But in between now and maybe our next meeting, we can clarify some of the things that we took away from this plan.
Yeah, we've got, we've got some work to do on our part to turn this into something other than a cartoon. Put actual, dimensions to this and make sure that it all works anyway. So
Great. Have you given thought to what you would request for zoning? Planned residential district?
I think so. That's probably the only thing that makes sense, rather than trying to split it up into two different zoning districts. Just do it as one, and that way, we can sit and kind of negotiate what the requirements are for everything, just the same way we did kind of the last one.
Mm-hmm.
That way, if there's any special circumstances, we can kind of work through that with the city.
Okay, so I'll offer a couple more things to think about as you press forward. A planned district, the current code now requires trails, the trail system, multi-use trails. Open space. There are open space requirements. There always have been open space, but they continue, and they were cleaned up to be to more accurately convey what we intended, which is half of the open space would be together conglomerated in one area for common use. Also, detention basins constructed for the purpose of stormwater management are no longer considered open space. And then street trees, we don't allow street trees in the right of way. So the next drawing, show them in the front yards, please.
All right.
And I thought I had one more I wanted to mention. It'll come to me. That's all I got now.
And Dave, if you want, feel free to send me your comments. I mean, we'll definitely look over them as we go forward. I mean, I would imagine we're gonna get very similar advice from ultimately whoever's reviewing the plan, so. We're gonna consider whatever feedback you have.
These are my general comments, and I don't speak for the commission, so they are presented for the commission's consideration.
Sure.
Should the commission wish to share with you certain of these comments, and I'm sure they'll
Okay,
be
that's
pleased to
fine.
do so. But if they look at all of my comments and say this is stupid, then why waste your time?
Well, if it's the
addressing-
commission's pleasure, please feel free to share with us anything, that Mr. Parkinson has kind of outlined, or anything else that you can think of, as we go through this process.
I think if we were having a burger and a Coke or something and we were trying to talk like this, that would be really uncomfortable. We're like, if it would be the pleasure of the engineer to please pass the salt.
It's too formal.
It is. Yeah, I'd just much rather plain speak.
I'll go plain speak. Anything that you guys want to
Thank you.
forward on to us, we're happy to kind of consider it as we work towards solving some of these issues and putting together the structure of a formal application.
You got it. We'll get you something back in writing within the next probably 2 weeks,
Okay.
if that's
no
okay.
problem. Yeah, oh yeah, it's good.
Good feedback, Joe. Anything else? Remember?
I like it.
Mrs. Cooper? Mr. Lawrence?
We'll see.
I'll take what we'll see.
You know, one thing I did want to say I like about this, and I'm really trying to get into this mindset, is transitional land use. So when you're talking about Orchid Park is going to be probably the largest lots, largest homes. That's just south, right next to the middle school.
Right.
And then you think going north onto Cheshire Road, a little bit smaller lot, into, a little bit tighter lot, into, more of a different product. And I think the transitional land use, the way it's stepped down, feels natural.
Well, we're transitioning in intensity really between a road that's going to take 30,000 cars a day or something of that nature, down to, ultimately some pretty large lots, along the school. So I think trying to find a way to kind of transition that in a way that makes sense. So not one individual use has to take a big step, between the uses like that. I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right, we're on to the visitors section. Do we have any visitors that would like to speak this evening?
Yeah, so obviously I was interested to hear what they have to say, because we've been contract on that lot for quite some time. And
Want to introduce yourself?
Nate Softman with Need Roofing Services.
Okay.
Also the party that's in contract on the lot that we spoke about. At some point as a business, we have to make a decision if it's going to be practical for us to build our headquarters there or not. So I'm just looking to gather information for the access to that property. So it sounds like there's a ton of dependencies, and that medical building currently, the way it's accessed, they weren't allowed to. Thank you. We weren't allowed to split off and drive through there. So is it strictly a dependency on these other developments for that to separate?
Yeah, Mr. Parkinson.
No, the dependency is on you gaining access to Kentner Parkway so that you don't need to gain access to 36, 37. If you can get that done yourself, you don't need to wait for the other developments.
Well, but that access already exists through the owner of the medical building, but it's not allowed to go through that parking lot to get to.
It's not allowed to use the entrance exit that exists between the Sunbury Tanning and whatever the next guy next door is. It's got to go all the way over to Kentner. And that access doesn't exist today. And the owners of the properties have not expressed an interest in helping with that need at this moment. So if you can solve that, then you don't need this development. But if this development can help solve that problem, then.
But how are they accessing the medical building currently?
They have the approval to do that. What we told them was if they wanted the lot split, they would have to solve the problem of the access for the lot.
Yeah.
So the lot split is contingent on, to my knowledge, the lot split hasn't been formally affected.
Correct.
Right, so it doesn't exist. The lot doesn't exist today.
Yeah.
And because it's contingent upon having access directly over to Kentner.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Right, any other visitors? All right.
His family.
Good meeting in January, excuse me. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes? We had a full house at that meeting.
I would like to make that motion.
We got a motion by Mrs. Cindy Cooper.
Second.
Second by Joe Gokenhour. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Gokenhour,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes,
Mayor St. John.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
All right, we're on to the zoning report. Steve, did you have anything you'd like to cover with us tonight?
No, it was provided in your packet. We're on our usual kind of home building schedule at this point, other than just as we're about to run out of lots, Rolling Hills will be opening. So we'll see how that kind of plays out through the summer and with interest rates and everything else going on. I want to mention Trail-a-Palooza to you. We've been working with Mid-Ohio Regional Planning on the Ohio and Erie Trail and doing a trail town process with them. Thank you if you responded to our survey. We had a very good survey response rate. We're waiting to get information. They provided it in an aggregate for the 4 communities that are involved, but we're hoping to get it cut, sliced down a little better. Trail-a-Palooza is June 25th, and it's to celebrate the opening of yet another section of the Ohio Erie Trail. We'll probably just have a couple events downtown. The other thing I've been working with is with Morpsey on a technical assistant grant where they're going to take the last couple years with Rolling Hills and Price Farms. We've been having them include multi-use trails, updating base maps to include those trails, and then working with Planning Commission and the general public on what's our strategy moving forward on multi-use trails, goals, places we want to hit, whether that be Alum Creek or making sure that the Sunbury Parkway has an attractive trail system attached to it. And that's about all I want to mention, unless you have any questions from my report.
I'm going to bring up trails tomorrow. I'm meeting with the director of Morpsey. Steve, will you be there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think we're all on the same page that we want to connect all the communities together as much as possible. Our goal is to get to Alum Creek. Our goal is to finish the Ohio Erie Trail. We're not doing it because it's fun to do. We're doing it because it connects all the different neighborhoods together. And the same reason we updated our code, we want to build it as new development's coming. So I think we need to try to leverage, our small town feel and say, hey, Morpsey, you're the big dog out here. Can you please help us, map out these trails, leverage the resources that they have for us. Great. Thanks, Steve. All right. Any discussion or new business? Mr. Gokenhour?
No.
Ms. Miller? Mrs. Cooper? Mr. Lawrence?
No.
All right. Next meeting is April 25th, and I have a conflict that day.
Same.
Your conflict? All right. Mrs. Miller, would you like to run the meeting and hope that the other 3 members come?
yes, I can do that. I'll write that down.
Right. All right. Or we could reschedule if you like. Any conflicts, Mr. Gokenhour, Mr. Lawrence?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we'll have to validate. Rick Ryba will be here. I don't know that we have anything queued up at this point for the zoning commission.
Because you said I'm gonna run it, we're not gonna have a meeting because there's not gonna be anything.
Yeah,
That's my luck.
we could probably just change the date.
It's whatever you want.
Okay, I like that. Would it be okay to push it a week out? Should be the first weekend.
That would be good because May has 5 Mondays anyways.
Looking at potentially May the 2nd, is that correct?
So then would you also move the May meeting a week out so that it's 4 weeks after the May 2nd meeting?
That would be Memorial Day.
Yeah, the
Memorial Day is the
30th.
Nice try, Dave.
Could we still have it the 23rd, or do we get into any condensed timelines with submittals? Usually from zoning to zoning, it's not the big deal. It's kind of zoning to council. So would everybody be okay if I made a motion to change the April zoning meeting to May 2nd? I made the motion.
Second.
Second by Joe Gokenauer. Discussion. Roll call.
Meeting date. And rotating around, Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
and Mr. Gokenauer.
Yes.
Okay, so meeting date is 5/2.
So we'll meet 5/2 and 5/23. Is that correct?
As of right now,
As of right now. Got it.
we get the whole month of April off.
Looking forward to it.
All right, good deal. Any other new business? Next meeting, actually, I do have, it's unfinished. And that is, tonight is Mr. Parkinson's last night with us. And I just wanted to say a very special thank you. I cannot tell you how much information you filled my mind with. It's a lot. And I will continue to reference your emails when I go and try to figure things out. I'm really going to miss that.
Well, thank you. I hope it was useful information.
It was very, most of the time it caused, a RAM overload in my mind. I'm like, how do we solve this? But no, I'm very thankful for everything you've done. And it's been a true pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. That said, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Cooper. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilwoman Cooper,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes, that's who's coming back.
Mr. Gokenauer.
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Adjourned. That means it's officially here. These are yours.